Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching The Salty Sea, and it's been a little while since I've done a real budget video, something really to help you protect your wallets in this in this sort of wallet blasting game. We know from various confirmed sources at this point that the Heart of Ghur box set for Warcry 2.0, I'm very excited about it, but it does cost 230 US dollars. In British pounds, it's a little less. I know that the British pound number is about equivalent to 175 US dollars, so they get a little bit better deal. But most of the rest of the world is going to be looking at paying a pretty penny here for the Warcry box set, and so I think it's worth taking a look at whether or not it's a worthwhile purchase. Now, because first of all, $230 is a lot of money, both in terms of real dollars in your pocket and in terms of other Warhammer things you could buy with it, like where it could take you hobby wise. But the box does have a lot in it. You get 2 warbands, you get terrain, you get a board, you get a ruler, dice, a rule book, and mission cards. So that's everything you need to play, which is in the box. So I think that that's a really great place to start from, and a really great place to just remember at first, yes, I'm going to do a lot of complaining about the dollar price of this box. I think 230 is pretty painful, but it is good to remember that this is going to be once you buy it and you're over the sticker damage to your wallet. Once you're over the damage, I think you're going to be pleased with what you get. But whether or not it's kind of worth it dollar for dollar on an opportunity cost standpoint, I think really depends where you're at right now. I think that if you need everything in the box, that it's a great deal. And I'm actually going to try to prove that with some comparison shopping in a moment. Here's the thing, at a certain level, you are paying for the convenience of having it all in one place, having it all have, the Games Workshop kind of stamp of approval on it. So I'm going to see if I can kind of do better than 230 to get you everything you need for Warcry, and we'll see how I do. If you have stuff from other games, if you're not new to wargaming, the box is good in that if you don't have any Warcry stuff but you've done wargaming before, the box is good, but you can definitely do better. At least if you're on a budget, you can. If you're a Warcry pro, if you played all through first edition, the box is a bit of a luxury item, and so it's really important. One important skill I think to sort of cultivate in general is not getting excited by what people call the FOMO effect of Games Workshop's marketing. People talk about it like it's an evil thing. It is evil, but not in any way I wouldn't think of as standard for a company that needs to sell you stuff to stay alive. I would just say don't get it unless you're really into it for purely aesthetic reasons. Buy it as a luxury item. Buy it the way you would buy an overly expensive 6-pack of beer. I think that's where you're gonna sort of get your most happiness with it. So let's look at replacing the box. If we wanted to get everything that we were going to need for Warcry, what would we need, right? We would need this list: 2 warbands, terrain, a board, ruler, dice, rulebook, and mission cards. So let's just go through how could we get them separately, and where does that compare to this box? First of all, terrain. Getting the same quality as what GW puts out is expensive. Now, if you have a 3D printer, you can get STLs from a few different places. One place where I found a lot of things was printablescenery.com, but there's others. Otherwise, I think you've really got a couple options. One, you've got 3D printers on Etsy, and you've got MDF sellers. Etsy-wise, man, there's some cool stuff out there. So I'm showing right now Court of the Shadow King. You can see it with a Space Marine hanging out in there. This stuff is huge. It's gonna feel epic on your boards. It's a perfect scale. Honestly, I think it's a better scale compared to these models than even the Games Workshop stuff is. Now, maybe it's not quite as kind of perfectly set up for Warcry, but it is tall enough. These kind of rocky areas are tall enough to be line of sight blocking for infantry. That's going to be a really big motif of the things I'm showing today. But these archways are epic. If you you can paint stone. Stone is one of my favorite things to paint. If they ever release an army that's all stone, I'm going to buy it. But the stone and the wood is going to look incredible once it's been painted up really well. But it's $83 for this full set of terrain. So that's actually pretty competitive price-wise with a lot of the Warcry box terrain sets that they put out. A lot of those were going from anywhere between $75 to like $110. So this would be on the cheap side of Games Workshop terrain, and I think it's very competitive with Games Workshop, right? I think this is easily just as good as anything GW has put out there. But that's what I mean, where if you're looking for that type of quality, you're gonna often need to pay for it. If we look at some other options, right, there's the Ancient Ruins set from Chlorhaven. This is also kind of tall enough to be line of sight blocking for infantry. This is very climbable, right? So it's going to be very compatible with the Warcry rules. There's going to be fewer times when you could kick someone off of it just because of kind of the way it's shaped, but I think it's going to be a really solid terrain set. But that's also, going to be $85 on Etsy. At least to do the 28 millimeter set, the one that would actually work with Warcry. Goblin Grotto, I think, is another really good one, especially if you want kind of an underground feel to your games. This is climbable. It comes with bridges. It's also tall enough to be line of sight blocking for fighters. Now, these are not quite 3 inches tall. Both of these are not quite 3 inches tall. So some of the Warcry rules, you might have to house rule or massage them a little bit, just as far as 3-inch platforms and falling rules. But that should be pretty simple to do, honestly, in your home games. The Goblin Grotto is a little bit cheaper. You can get it in a few different places for $75 for this set right here. And so that's, I think, a pretty reasonable place to go if you're looking for terrain. You can also get kind of other types of sets. So, for example, Noble Knight Games has this modular fantasy terrain set. It's shown on a Warcry board, and it clearly fits perfectly, right? So you could use this. It's kind of a ruined town sort of feel. You can also go with MDF. MDF is going to be a little bit cheaper than these kind of filament 3D printed terrain sets are. And I'll be honest, I've put together some MDF, not terrain, but paint, paint racks. It is a little bit tougher. The annoyance of putting them together, it is tougher to put together than, say, GW plastic pieces are. It can be a little bit annoying, but it still is going to look great when it's painted, right? You'll just have to do a little bit of extra work, kind of probably stippling with like a ruined old synthetic brush, as opposed to just simple, a lot of people will just spray paint, dry brush, wash their terrain in a few spots and call it good. I think to make your MDF terrain look really good, you're going to have to give it a little bit more TLC than that, but it is, significantly cheaper than most of the kind of sets that you can get that have been 3D printed. This one is obviously in euros, but you can get ones for pretty reasonable prices otherwise. Once you get your terrain, and you can see there's a few different options for things that could fill up an entire Warcry board. Once you get your terrain, you're going to want to look for 2 warbands, right? That's what the box comes with. That's what you need to kind of get started. And there's a lot of great one-box warbands. I'm going to start with ones that GW sells. So first of all, for $55 US, you can get any bespoke Warcry warband. My faves are Corvus Cabal and Untamed Beasts. Iron Golems is good because it sees Age of Sigmar play, so you could kind of cross, if you're a competitive AOS player, you can kind of do both. A lot of options there for the bespoke stuff. You can also get Age of Sigmar warbands that only use one box. So for example, the Plague Monk box. I got this. I have no regrets. I think it's amazing. You get 1 Bringer of the Word, 19 Plague Monks, which is incredible, and then 8 Giant Rats. So that's just a massive a massive haul. and they're pretty competitive at the moment too. Who knows once the compendium comes out, but another one that's pretty competitive at the moment is if you just get the Lead Belcher box. You get a Thunder Fist, 3 Lead Belchers or Gluttons. You can build them either way. And then I can't remember if it's 4 Gnoblars or 6 Gnoblars. But either way, enough Gnoblars to give you bodies, to give you kind of the ability to be pretty flexible with how you attack objectives. The Lead Belcher box is a really good, I would say one of the best ways to start in Warcry. And then also, you know, the Bone Splitters Mafia will beat me up if I don't mention the Savage Orcs box. I'm not a big believer in Savage Orcs. Lots of people are. I'm often put in this position of, since there aren't that many people who kind of release Warcry content weekly, that if there's something that I'm personally biased against, people will just say it's out and out bad. Listen, I think Bone Splitters are bad. Lots of people disagree with me. You should at least know that there are reasonable people who love Bone Splitters and think that this box is great, even though I don't. You don't have to go for GW, though, for your kind of first Warcry warbands. In fact, a company called Artisan Guild, I really want to talk about. They have not paid me. I've never met anyone with Artisan Guild, but man, they've got some great options here. If you go to the Frost Metal Clan, you can get 5 Ardboys, 3 Brutes, a Weird Knob Shaman, and a Mega Boss, all for $60 for the full set on Etsy. It also comes with the dude on top of this giant Rhino Beast thing. Who knows what you're going to do with that? It's not going to be in Warcry. A few of these pieces don't really have a quick analog in Warcry, but that's okay because 5 Ardboys, 3 Brutes, Weird Knob, Mega Boss, I mean, that's enough to keep kind of experimenting with your Ironjawz loadouts for a while. So I think that Frost Metal Clan is just a great way to put Ironjawz on the table if you want to play some Warcry. Sunken Kingdoms I think is really cool. You've got Eels, you've got Namarti, you've got Heroes. You're going to pay kind of roughly $6 per model if you go get them one by one. The only thing is this full set is a lot more expensive than the other full sets just because this giant dragon turtle is a really expensive add-on, so to get the full set you have to pay quite a bit. But if you get sort of one by one from this set, you know, some of the Namarti, some of the Eels, whichever hero you want, you could mix and match it with, you could get a GW hero and then get some of the Eels from this. You can go a lot of different directions and fill out an entire Idoneth Deepkin warband for significantly cheaper than you could, you know, just getting it from G-Dubs. The Fighters Guild I think is really interesting. You can't get it for cheaper than you could get a Cities of Sigmar warband. $51 for this full set on Etsy, but you can actually get warbands for Cities of Sigmar for cheaper than 51 bucks. But what I wanted to talk about it is you have not infinite flexibility here with what's in this box set and kind of how you can proxy it for Cities of Sigmar. And then also, huge bonus here, this is the only one where I actually think it's better looking than the Games Workshop version. I'm not into the Games Workshop Cities of Sigmar sculpts, but some of these are really cool. I think, you know, a lot of these infantry, you get cavalry too. I think it's a really cool set, and I think you can do a lot with it and bring it into Warcry in a really cool way. So, as you can see, you have a lot of options to spend about $50 to get a Warcry warband. Sometimes they're actually even pretty competitive for that price. Sometimes they're not, but lots of different ways to get really solid sort of variable options for this game for about 50 bucks. Now you're going to need other bits too. So let's talk about sort of, instead of a ruler, you might have one at home. You might have regular measuring tape at home, but you can also get for $5 at Joann Fabrics. Taylor's measuring tape is a really good option. Dice, you're going to need really at least 12 dice to play Warcry. Chessex, Dark Elf dice, Etsy, lots of people sell them. You can get pretty reasonable ones, 12 for 10 bucks. I would, word of warning though, I got some Chessex dice, have played with them a little bit. They consistently roll 330 out of 100 rolls, like very consistently, not exactly 330, you get my point, but like in the high 320s, low 330s almost every time I roll 100 times with them. So not all dice are weighted correctly. I think Chessex actually has a really good reputation for having perfectly weighted dice, so I'm actually surprised that mine are underweight. But basically, the dice that I got from them will consistently roll bad, and you can test this over 1,000 rolls with them, and they will continue to roll bad. So just be careful with where you buy from and making sure that they actually treat their dice well. Because if I was rolling and it was the opposite problem, and I was rolling like 370 out of 100 with my dice, that's legitimately cheating, right? You can't do that, especially you can't do it knowingly, and you're gonna figure it out after rolling a set of dice, in like a couple dozen games. You're gonna figure out if they're even or maybe a little weighted. So try to go with a company. If you're gonna get dice that aren't from GW, try to go with a company that has a good reputation for actual quality control with their dice. You are going to need the core book. That's the one piece of this where you really do have to go with GW. The last core book was $40. I would expect this one to be a little bit more expensive, so I would say $45. That's the only piece, though, that you really need to jump in on. For missions, real fun fact, GW did a video about sort of showing how to play the new edition of Warcry, and in it, they previewed 3 deployments, 3 missions, 3 twists. You don't need the cards. You can just look at that video, screen grab it, and just use those. That's 27 combinations of deployment, mission, twist. You could also argue it's whatever the next multiple of 9 is, 36 combinations, because you could just play with no twist as well. I actually think no twist is easily just as fun as playing with a twist. So I would do that. If I was trying to go for this on a budget. You could also buy the Tome of Champions. That one has really good missions that are still going to be valid even with the second edition, right? So I think that's a really good option for a way you could do this cheaply, is to kind of mix and match in this way. So let's look at how we did, right, if we add all this up. $230 for the box versus if you start with nothing at all. 2 warbands, we have tons of options, both GW and non-GW, to get 2 warbands for $100. Now, you can get much cheaper than that if you're willing to go kind of significantly below GW quality. There's a lot of kind of old mini companies out there that are still selling things that they designed in, maybe 2005, and it looks like what GW was designing in 1999, but it's still out there for sale, and you can get it much cheaper than that. Personally, I don't love playing with that level of age in my sculpts. I don't really have that nostalgia thing. Maybe I'm just too young for this game. But if you're okay with that, you can do cheaper than $100 for 2 warbands. I would say go with the MDF terrain if you're budget conscious for $60. Board is free, right? Just mark your table out. Use masking tape, use a pen, use whatever you need to, but just mark your table out and don't play with a board. Ruler, right? $5 for a tailor's tape. Dice, probably about $10 to get good ones. The rule book going to be $45, and then mission cards are free, and that all totals up to $220. I could not stop laughing when I did that, when I was sort of prepping for this video, doing research. Now, obviously, someone from Games Workshop went out and did this research themselves. The price of this box would not be $230 if you could do this without the box for like $125. You know what I mean? So clearly someone at GW has gone and done this research, and that's a big part of how they decided that $230 was the price point. Don't tell me it's because of like what's in the box, how much plastic is in the box, because that just varies so much from from box to box and game to game, right? The original starter set was 160 and had double the amount of plastic that this one does. So it's not the amount of plastic in the box. Their margins on that plastic are like incredible. They've clearly like done their research and seen how, how well can you do this without them. And they're going to come in like at a very similar price point. Basically, they're coming in at the same price point and then charging you $10 for convenience. So if you just are starting completely from scratch, the Heart of Ghur box is a great buy, I think. This is an expensive hobby, unfortunately, so I would say $230 is about the price you're going to pay. That's a similar price to a lot of the kind of high-end luxury board games, and Warcry, I'd say, it competes really well with those high-end luxury board games. So give that a try. Now, if you have literally anything already, if you're coming in from another war game like Age of Sigmar, or if you've played some God Tier or God Tear, I don't know how you pronounce it, but another skirmish war game, something like that, I would just grab the rest for cheap, right? Whatever you've got right now, like if you've got terrain, just grab the rest for cheap. You'll have a little bit more flexibility that way. You'll have, in some cases, better materials, like you can get a really good ruler, or you can decide what dice you're going to get. So if in that case, if you're coming from another game, don't buy the box unless you love 2/3 of it. If you love 2 of the warbands, don't love the terrain, then it's probably worth it. One of my patrons, Will, amazing, called it the meatloaf test. If you like 2/3 of the box, then it's worth it, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's basically what we're looking at here. But I just wanted to kind of do this research and show this in a video as kind of a PSA of kind of where you're at and where kind of your other options are if you want to play this game. We're going to have the rulebook on its own. You're not going to have to buy the box for the rulebook. So you can absolutely kind of mix and match on your own the way you want to. One thing I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the Warrior set for Age of Sigmar. It takes care of 2 warbands, dice, and 2 rulers for $50. Now, the reason I don't want to kind of recommend this right away is both warbands are incredibly inflexible in Warcry. Gut Rippas are not really what you want in Warcry. I've heard they're not what you want in AOS either. Vindictors are not what you want in Warcry. They do come with some pretty good leaders, but you're just not going to have a lot of flexibility to really have a ton of fun here with the Warrior set. It's not going to have a lot of long-term replayability for you, I think, the way it would if you got to actually choose your warbands. But it saves $65 off the previous estimate, and that's a lot of money. So if you're desperate to play some Warcry, the Warrior set is a great thing to do. And if you're way more enterprising than I am, I'm blanking on the name. Luckily, someone will put the link to the video in my comments. I know this, so please do. There's an incredible video on the internet of a guy. He's a genius. He cut up the box that they give you, this little box that you're supposed to use terrain on, that all these Vindictors are standing on, and he cut it up into lots of smaller pieces of terrain to then do kind of a scatter terrain board. If you want to watch that video, you can absolutely then use the Warrior set to be your Warcry starter. The other thing, though, also, like, it comes with 10 dice instead of 12. You really need 12. So I don't want to recommend this, but it is something you can do. So I just wanted to make this little kind of PSA about the box. I think it's a really great starter for Warcry 2.0, but as someone who has a lot of 1.0 stuff, I would probably skip it and just try to get the rulebook and the Nurgle. Now, I am going to be getting it for the channel and to eventually have, I think the terrain, while I think I have criticisms of it, I'm really excited to be mixing and matching it with the original terrain. I'm really looking forward to having enough terrain and boards to eventually host a tournament, right? Like if I could get 8 boards worth of stuff Being able to host a 16-player tournament would be really nice. I currently only have 2 boards worth of stuff, so these box sets are good for me at the moment. So I'm going to be getting it to review it, to play with the Warbands, give my guides to them. But otherwise, unless you love the Warbands or love the terrain, you can find other options. So just remember that anytime you feel really boxed in with some Games Workshop prices, you've got some other options out there to play their games, on your own terms. So I'm going to come back with kind of more covering the news of the game, certainly the strategy of, as it comes out, as we learn more about the rules. I'm going to be covering all of that, but until then, may all your rolls be crits.